I'm Jay Hart. Welcome back to my channel. 32 Ford.
That's not Jay Hart. Jay Hart, and this is not a 32 Ford. What is this, Brian?
40 Ford, soon to be a convertible.
So this is my buddy Brian Clark. Brian is a real hot rodder. I just play one on YouTube. He's a real hot rodder, lifelong hot rodder, and you've heard me talk about him on my channel quite a bit. I've learned a lot of stuff from Brian. Brian's right down the road, and he's been a big help. He knows just about everything I need to know about fitment and parts, and he's been such a great just roadmap for me in building my car. But Brian is building this really killer 40 Ford convertible. It's an amazing car. I've already seen a lot of the parts for the car. It's a you call it a late 50s custom.
Late 50s, mild custom, I guess would be the.
Yeah, I mean, and he has modified every part of this car is modified, just every single thing from down to just about every knob. Everything on the interior, the exterior. I've been lucky enough to build a couple parts for the grill. I'll show you those here in just a moment. But those parts were a lot of fun to build. I didn't even know what I was building. Like I've always said, I've worked on tons of hot rods in my life. I usually just listen to what the customer wants. They say, hey, can you make this for me? And then I make it. But what we're doing here today is this car needs an exhaust. It's to the point where everything has been built for this car. All the modifications have been done for this car, and it's time to finally build the exhaust system. And I'll tell you this, a lot of guys, where they mess up on building an exhaust is they start building the exhaust before their car is done being modified. And so they don't know where everything goes. So we've spent, how long today?
2 hours, 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours. We probably spent 2.5 hours just fitting up some of the extra parts, making sure that we know where those things go so we know how to route the exhaust. I don't know how many times I've seen guys build a motorcycle. I've built a lot of motorcycle exhausts. And they bring their bike to my shop and they say, hey, I need this exhaust. Well, they haven't built their brakes. They haven't built their clutch pedal. Their oil tank's not mounted. They have all these things. You can't build an exhaust until that's done. And a lot of people say this, you've probably heard it, but the first thing that you see on a motorcycle is the last thing that you build, the exhaust. And so if you're building a motorcycle and you're building the exhaust system, I want to tell you what, don't be exhausted when you build the exhaust system, because it's the last thing. And people get excited, they want it done because it's the last thing they need to build. But you need to slow down because that's one of the first things you see on a motorcycle. Exhausts are important to me. I hate to see an exhaust system where there's two twin pipes and they're not quite, they're not quite parallel. They're just kind of like that. And they don't flow with something else. Or they go right next to a frame rail and the frame rail's here and the exhaust is like here. It's just not, it's not flowing. So slow down. That's what we've been doing. We've been coming along here. Look at the hummingbird. We've been, we've been making sure that everything is in place. The master cylinder's in place. We went over to Denny's last night. They got the block in, transmission in, got the headers on now. Of course, we need the headers on. Can't really build an exhaust without that there. But just making sure that everything is where it goes. Knowing where your fuel lines go. Knowing where your brake lines are going to go. Knowing where your pedals are going to sit and how they're going to function. Making sure that his rear end's already dropped to where it's going to be. His front end's already sitting where it's going to be. And we were just discussing the leaf springs. We've got 2 or 3 springs in it right now. So it's probably, it's probably going to have a little more travel. I've always heard that you put one spring in, and that usually tells you about where your car is going to sit without all the other stuff on it. But we've got a block in it, and we got the transmission in it. So sitting there with no body and no other weight, it's probably close to where it goes. But this wishbone runs really close to where the headers come out on this side, and we're going to have to ramp that up pretty quickly and get it up through the hole and back. And I'll show you the routing here in just a moment. But I can't tell you how stoked I am to build this exhaust, because I know what this car is going to be. When did you start this car? When did you start this project?
We don't want to talk about that.
How long ago?
Remember COVID?
Yeah, so
remember that finding body workers, paint,
yeah,
upholstery, material?
Yeah.
I couldn't find any of my leather, any of my carpeting, anything when I started this car.
Yeah.
And when I found it, I bought enough for 2 cars. So if you need a whole car worth of carpeting and leather, give me a call.
Well,
I bought a number of cows.
So this car has been in the works for a long time. It's a very special car. I've seen all these different modifications and all these very special parts that Brian's collected for it. And again, he's a real hot rodder. Like, I just play one on YouTube. Brian's been doing this his whole life. I mean, since he was a kid. When'd you have your first 40?
I was 13.
13 years old, his first 40. Pretty dang cool. So Brian's right down the road from me. He's been a big help in figuring out what fits my car and what's cool for my car. I'm just so stoked to know the guy, and I'm just glad I get to work on this car. But let's move the camera around here a little bit, and we'll walk around the car and talk a little bit about like how we're going to route this thing and what we're going to be paying attention to. And again, the most important thing in building an exhaust system: slow down, think your way through it, do some visual engineering. If you just got to sit and look for a little while, do that. Consider the parts you have. We've got 4 different bins, and we have 4 of each of those different bins. Got some 30s, got some L90s, we've got some 180s. You know, we have to consider what you have, because if you just start chopping on stuff, you know, you may not have enough unless you have some nice mandrel bender in your shop and you can just make as much stainless tubing as you like. You know, maybe you don't have to worry about that. But, you know, we're building an exhaust system right out here. I've had some very fancy equipment in my life, and I've been able to use that fancy equipment. To be honest, it's not all that necessary. Some of the best work I ever did was early in my career. I worked in I wouldn't even call it a 1-car garage. It was like a half-car garage. And when I first started getting my motorcycles in the magazines and things like that on television, I was in a 1-car garage. Now, I had some great friends I could go borrow some of their tools, but we're going to build this exhaust system the same way I would have built it back then. And by the way I mean build it back then, I mean slow down and pay attention, do a lot of visual engineering, and consider the material that we have to complete the project. So let's see how well we can do that.
Do it. That's one of the things, since we don't have an entire engine sitting here, so not to play by Jay's rules. We don't have a full engine block, because what a battle using a full engine block as a mock-up. But we have the mechanical pieces of that. So we're going to probably be closer to the wishbone with the frame out of the gate. So it's going to be imperative that we take this out of this Fenton style header. That unfortunately, because it was available, I had Sermachrome from Caps out in Fresno do for me, and so we had to tape those all up to protect them. But we're gonna have to turn upward quickly, get out of this cross member hole.
We got to come around the master cylinder.
Give enough, yeah. Get out of here so the pedal doesn't move, doesn't come down. It's not gonna interfere. It's gonna be an easy clear there. Brake lines and fuel lines are gonna be along inside the frame rail. We'll take that hole. Yep. Take that hole into the muffler bay, we'll call it.
We'll have a muffler here in this area.
Using pretty short mufflers. I thought about doing none. I love the sound of flathead engines, but it is a convertible, so maybe a little bit of noise dampening will help. Definitely building a driver. It'll have a Columbia rear end, so that'll be convenient. Plus, this is not as fast as most other engines, or any engine in the world.
Yeah.
It is a flathead.
So we've got a general plan here.
Yeah.
And both sides are not symmetrical, because of course this header has to come out and clear the steering box, which we just removed the steering box. We did have the steering box in, and it's not going to be anywhere near where we're working for this exhaust. It's a little bit different on this side. You know, we've got kind of a straight shot coming back on this side, and that'll be a little bit easier on the passenger side of the car. So let's start cutting some pieces of tube here. We'll cut up some tube and start from the front, work our way to the back. So I've got Brian holding this in place. We've already got our front piece cut. We've got a nice turnip over the turnip. We got a nice turnip over the wishbone. Got it positioned through the X member hole right where we want it to be. So I'm taking my scribe and I'm scribing around the outer edge of this, and that'll show us where we need to tack it, because we're welding this exhaust up on the inside on the gasket flange where we can clean it up, because this is carbon and this is stainless. This is already ceramic coated. We've cleaned it off on the other side where we will be welding it up. That was tough. Where we will be welding it up.
Got that.
So I've already got it, you know, scribed on the top, and we'll scribe on the bottom. And then I'm going to take my marker and make a few timing marks around it. We'll be making a couple timing marks in here, just to know that's where we got it. Got that one a little big, but we got it where we needed it to be. And then I can get underneath here and do the same on the bottom, just to give us a couple little timing marks. That'll show us where we want it to be once we take all this off, because we have to disassemble it to tack it in place, then put it back on, make sure it's where we want it to be, then we can weld that piece up, and that'll be a good starter.
People might ask, why are you not using a stainless flange so you could just weld it on the outside? Well, these awesome Roadster Supply headers are obviously cast iron, and the flanges that came with this exhaust kits that you buy nowadays, probably not made in, we'll say, Tennessee, probably made somewhere overseas.
Yeah.
Come with stainless flanges that are way too big.
And you can't see this because they're all taped up, but Brian did an incredible job polishing all these cast headers out. It's really, they're slick. They look really nice. We'll give you a look at them eventually. All right, we're cleaning off our 045 rod here. It's 308 stainless rod. A quick note on this carbon to stainless joint. We're just using the 308 rod to tack it together because that's what we're using for the rest of the exhaust system. On this particular joint, we're going to finish weld that whole joint with 309 rod. It's a much better combination for carbon to stainless. I've been using the same rod, the same box of rod for nearly 25 years. I bought a giant box of this years ago, and when I like something, that's what I do. If I find a nice pair of boots, I buy 2 or 3 pairs of the same kind. I'm just always worried that they're going to stop making them or something like that. I do the same thing with shirts. You'd be shocked to see my shirt collection. There's particular shirts that I have that I own like 4 of the same exact shirt because I'm afraid of getting it stained or tearing it or losing it. When I find something I like, I just kind of stick with it. I've been using this 308 rod for about 25 years. We're going to use it on this exhaust system. And I've built more exhaust systems for cars and motorcycles than I could count or remember. I've never had a single one fail. People have their own way of purging exhaust, and just a lot of different methods that people use to build exhaust. But I can say I've welded stuff the same way for 25 years. I've never had a single failure. So that's why I'm going to keep on doing it. So we've got our piece here. We've got it marked. We've got it scribed, and we've got it timed. And I can see exactly where this piece goes. We got these little timing marks I've made around it, and I've got my scribe marks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this in place and just try to get a little tack on it. We get a couple tacks on this thing. Try to get it where I can hold it nice and tight with just one thumb. That's what we want. We want to get it where it's clocked, and we get it with just one thumb. I can get it pressed into place. Try to get it right in the sweet spot here, because I'm not welding it from the outside. We're going to weld this from the inside. We've cleaned off the inside edge, and we've cleaned off, as you can see, about 3/16 of an inch outside of here. So we're going to be able to get this welded up. kind of tough to hold it in place. But once you get that tack on, you're good to go. A little tricky to start. But once you get one, you're good to go. There we go. Check our timing mark. Get my cheaters on. Make sure I can see this. If you haven't noticed, since I'm working on Brian's car, Brian was nice enough to bring my welding helmet back. I can hang Grandpa's back up on the wall for a while. I have to build a glass case for it, break in case of emergency. Okay. Let's see if I can line up my scribe mark a little better. We're about right there. Get another tack on. Again, just slowing down helps a whole lot. Just slowing everything down a bit. I'm going to put one more tack on. I'm going to bolt it back on and have a look at it. Okay, so we got 3 tacks on it. It's held in place pretty nice and snug. I'm going to bolt this back up and just make sure that it's where we want it to be, and then we'll zip this thing up. Carefully.
There.
How do we look in the hole?
Good. Go back.
Got a great angle on that. So I'd say that's ready to be welded up. So of course you're fitting a lot of tubing up when you're building the exhaust system, and you really want everything to be nice and flush before you go welding on it. A lot of people use a disc sander to try to, get a nice flat turn on their tubing, and that's a great method. I've used that as well, but I actually like using my offset because I just feel like it makes you go a little bit slower. It slows you down, and I kind of like that, and to make a more perfect part. So we've got this flange, and it's fitting loose on here. So what I've done in order to fit all my tubes up years ago, I made up some of these in a lathe. I just cut down a couple blocks and polished up the edges. And if I need, sometimes on a bend, these pieces are kind of oblong. So if you're putting a bend to a nice straight piece, it's not going to fit all that nicely. Right now, the problem that we're having is that we have this clamping system that slides down over this, and there's just a little bit of a gap on this. There's a little bit of a gap, as I showed you inside at the welding table, and we're trying to stretch this out to fit the clamp. So this thing works really well for doing that. Stainless is a little harder, of course. You know, if you're just welding up carbon, it's pretty quick to knock this stuff in here and get it stretched out, but it just needs a couple whacks sometimes. Yeah, that's already fitting better. We could take it out a little bit more, but that's already fitting where we can get a nice weld on it. Let's try that again. Oh, I heard that one. Didn't that sound good? That one sounded right. Yeah, now we're perfect. So we're just fuse welding these on. We're not using any filler rod. These clamps are really nice. Got a nice recess. Fits nice and tightly over the tubing. Put the muffler here. That fits on there. We've got this nice material here. So we're not putting any rod in. We're just fusing them. This actually doesn't go on this side. I just wanted to show you that because I'd already started. And I'm just pulsing with my foot. You know, I'm not going to turn this while I'm welding because my arm will get in the way, I guess. But I'm just pulsing with the pedal. If you notice the pedal as I'm welding, I'm just pulsing in with the pedal. I got it. It's actually a good pulse setup on this Invertech 205T. This is a great machine. Again, Lincoln Electric, wonderful machine. These guys sponsor me. They were really, really good to me. Just a great all-American company. Love that company up in Cleveland, Ohio. But rather than set the machine up, I just use the pedal, and I'm just turning it. Make sure we keep some gas on it. Do some short sections here. You know, could roll this while we're welding it, but this works just fine. All right, we're coming along pretty good here. We've got our front piece off the headers coming back to the muffler. We've got our tailpipe just about ready. This piece needed to go. We had to move this around the master cylinder and around the pedal setup. The other side was quite a bit easier over here, because it was a little more of a straight shot to get it back to this section. So we've got our mufflers ready to go. We're going to clamp the tailpipe on to show us what kind of spacing we have through the frame holes here, because we're using all the stock frame holes. These clamps, I believe they're called V-clamps, Brian said. Is that right, Brian?
Yeah, that's what I've heard them called.
So they're just two flanges.
Pretty slick little design.
Let's see the flange here. So you've got these two flanges. They go together, and the clamp goes around them and holds them. So we're going to tailpipe in place. Once we have both tailpipes in place here, that'll show us where we need to tack these mufflers, this end, into this clamp, because that's not tacked in right there, right, Brian?
But
so once we have all this hung where we need it to be, then our system will be built Here's these pieces. It's the same way. This muffler will sit here, same way. Very symmetrical from here back. And then we'll be done all the way back to the humps that are going to go over the axle. Brian's already got his going here. And once we clamp that down, then that'll all be in place. And we're going to do the same thing to this side. I'll get this side. Okay, so we've got everything clamped in place, and this is the only loose joint through the whole system right now, is right here on both sides. So we've got the tailpipe through the frame hole back here. We've balanced out all of the area around each frame hole to make sure that we've got plenty of clearance in all directions. And is that where we went through stock, I assume, right?
Right there.
Yeah. So we're going through the stock holes, stock position. And Brian's going to get this thing lined up kind of right where he wants it. And then I'm going to tack this joint into place right here in this V-clamp. You tell me when to go, Brian.
Go, sir.
Clamps are nice because the flange on them is just perfect. It makes it nice. Makes it easy to fuse. You don't really need the rod. I'll carry the rod around just in case.
Do it.
Where we want it?
Do it.
Even the squirrel agreed.
I think that was a bird.
Jaybird. It's a jaybird. Best bird.
I'm not getting paid enough for this.
Success! What do you think?
Goes way off.
I quit. Okay, let's get a look at this thing. Clean. So now we've got the exhaust all the way to the back. And I think we have a nice, well-balanced system that's going to flow very nicely from the headers all the way back. We don't want this thing tied in knots. We want it nice and simple. I want to consider the function of this. There's a lot that goes on underneath a car. A lot of moving parts. And you just want this to be as simple, as clean as possible. And we've made it all the way to the back, as you can see. So Brian, what was the first engine you ever built? You've been hot rodding a long time, since you were a kid. What's the first engine you ever built? Everybody remembers their first engine. What was your first engine?
Absolutely. I totally remember it. I came up with a new old stock block. In fact, it was Army surplus, green paint on it. I put aluminum head, chromed a bunch of stuff. I lived in San Diego. I grew up in San Diego, so Bob McCoy was one of my buddies, and Lemon Grove Plating, so they both got in on it. Lemon Grove plated the, you know, air cleaner and whatever. McCoy striped it, and buffed the fins on the aluminum heads, and yeah, it was a blast.
Really?
I got an A+.
Whatever happened to that? Whatever happened to the engine?
Well, you know, I brought it. It's right here.
Check that out. Check that out. Look at that! Look at that!
Jay put me up to this.
So listen, the real story. What's the real story?
The real
You
story.
can go ahead and set it down.
The real story is I majored in industrial arts at San Diego State, and the first semester you build an engine. So in truth, I built that engine. It was a new old stock block, and all that stuff's true. And I left it there with the teacher for a few years because he wanted to show other kids that, you know, you maybe something more than a can of Krylon and some steel wool, you know, kind of gives an engine a little bit better aesthetic value than just making it run. So I've always been a little OCD and over the top. So
Well, that's really.
when I got it back, I was happy to get it back.
Well, it's really killer. I want to step over here real quick because, so Brian was telling me this story about his engine the other day. He saw the sign I got here. My buddy Kevin found this sign, and I was able to kind of talk him out of it. I loved it. It was a great sign. And he saw the sign, and he started talking about the sign. And I was like, what? I got to see this engine. So he brings this engine over today. And so I really want you to have this sign. That sign belongs with this engine, don't you think? That sign belongs above this engine. That would be such a great display. I mean, I just think that would be so cool to see this sitting with that.
Done.
That's where it goes. So
My wife always says I got a degree in small engine repair because this is the only thing she knows that I ever did for that degree. So I've never been in small engine repair for a living. In fact, I'm really not that good a mechanic. I just got a degree in it. I like to build shiny, really cool cars, and I love flatheads and guys like Jay that, you know, help me achieve my dreams, because I sat at a desk for 35 years and I didn't have the time in the shop like I wish I had. But I have built a number of engines, flatheads, 350 Chevy, you know.
Brian's had a lot of really
British
cool
Stratton.
cars. He's got a lot of really cool cars, and he's been a huge help to me in building this 32 Roadster. I'm surrounded by some really great, talented, knowledgeable guys, and I'm so grateful for that. And I couldn't build this car without these fellas.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. Good stuff. Good, clean fun.
Okay, so as I mentioned, a lot of consideration to moving parts when doing an exhaust on a car that sits this low. This car is going to be what I would call slammed. What's the height of the rear frame rail across the back?
13 inches off the ground on the rear rail.
That seems pretty low to me, but yeah,
No bags.
yeah. And you're running what spring kit?
Posey, 44 Posey reverse eye kit. I think they say that will lower a car 2.5 inches. Don't quote me, but I have the same spring on a 2-door.
And we've already dropped the
Ride's great.
and the rear cross member was dropped how many inches?
3 inches.
3 inches. So
Yeah,
this
yeah,
car's
yeah.
really slammed. So what we wanted to do to make certain that we had perfect room for this exhaust, that it was going to be out of the way of the wishbone, out of the way of the axle. He's running a Columbia rear end in this, so there was a lot to consider in that too, because that's not the same configuration, not the same shape. There's a little bit more going on with that axle. But what we did is we clamped this thing down to a 1-inch block between the axle and the frame, because that's going to be where the bump stop is anyway. That's what we're going to set that as, 1 inch. And we designed this system where the exhaust still has a little room, that it's still right there. It'll never hit this exhaust. It flows nicely up with the frame. We tried to keep it kind of right in between the frame rail, the bottom of the frame rail, and the floorboards. So it's not going to be a heat issue anywhere. We did run it all the way to the back, but we've got another maybe 16 inches to run out the back. But he's got some custom stuff, some really cool stuff going on with this bumper and the rear end of this car. So we want to see that on the car before we go ahead and pop it out the back, just to make certain it's in the perfect spot. So we're to the back, and we got the tailpipes that are going to come out here, and we got a particular angle that we want these things to come out for the finished height off the bumper, the gap that we want these to hang down from the bumper. We've taken a 1-inch piece of wood and got it screwed in here, just kind of trapped in here where we want it. Here's where we had let off before we had the material to make these pipes. We had to wait a couple days to get this to finish out the tailpipe area here. Well, so now we need to get this angle coming off of here to match this tubing here. And I just wanted to show you this because this is what we've had to do all the way down the exhaust. You find where you want it to, which direction you want it to go, and then you need to find this angle. Now, you could use an angle finder here. To be quite honest, I've done so much of this, I don't use any of that stuff anymore. I used to use it a lot. I used to put my angle finder on here, clamp that angle in, but I can, you know, I've just gotten to where I can kind of look and see what this is. I've cut so many pieces on this tubing I can just kind of look at it and see. And I've just eyeballed my angle where it goes. You can see I've made a little, you know, marker line around this to get this angle where I need it to go. And I'm going to add that to this piece of tubing and line that up. And I'll get it really close. I'll have to massage it to fit on this other piece of tubing here, but that's okay. Again, a lot of people use a chop saw and they'll use a disc grinder, you know, a big disc grinder to get their flat edge on this. I'm just using my die grinder, my death wheel, and my offset to make these ends. I've got a little flat spot on this machinist vise that I beat up. I really just use it like no machinist ever would want you to use, but I use it for fabricating stuff, and I got a little flat spot on it. And as I grind it, I just sit it on there, and yep, it's flat. If it doesn't have any wobble, and then I can angle it how I want. I do that all the time, even if I'm using a disc sander. Even if I'm using a big disc sander, I still take my die grinder by hand and clean it up and massage it. I just still do. I mean, I don't know why. That's just the way that I do it. But again, I don't use a lot of fancy tools to do this. And I get a really tight fit on each one of these. As you can see, I can fuse all these all the way down. I'm not going to add a lot of, you know, rod to it. Here and there, maybe a little bit. But that's what I do. And I'll take, you know, a piece. If you have a piece that you can lay around it to get your line, you know, just a clip, you know, an old clamp like that. Then you can slide that down. You can use a piece of paper and wrap it around it and get a nice square line on it if you want. And that tells you roughly where you need to cut it. Again, I'm just massaging these things in. I've gotten pretty good at eyeballing it and getting the right cut on it. I mean, to be honest, all the way down this exhaust, I messed up one piece. And really it was just, we just changed the design of how we were gonna come through one of the frame holes. That's the only piece that we changed all the way down it. So this method works really well for me. You know, if you've never done this before, you might want an angle finder. You might want to find something like that. You might want some sort of like, you know, something that'll hold that angle for you. You may want, make sure you use a disc sander. You may want a chop saw that gives you a straighter cut. You may want those things, and they might help you. And I certainly used a lot of those things when I first started building exhaust. This is just the way I do it now because I don't build a lot of exhaust anymore, and I don't need disc sanders. I don't need chop saws because most of what I do in my day job, it's all sheet metal on 1936 to 48 Harley Davidson sheet metal. Most of what I do. Therefore, I don't need those tools. That's not what I use. I use a lot of just old school hammer and dolly stuff. And, I got a spot welder that I use and just some other tools, but I just don't need that big stuff anymore. But if I'm going to keep building some hot rods, I'm probably going to have to get a bigger shop and get more tools because you run into a real estate problem with hot rods compared to motorcycles. You can build a motorcycle in your living room. I guess you can build a hot rod in your living room. I'm sure people have, but this is how I do things. Just wanted to show you that. And I like these angled soft jaws. It's nice, for holding tubing and stuff because they clamp up real nice in here. And again, I like to wear my mask when I'm using these Kevlar cutoff wheels. Death wheel, as I call it. I use a death wheel. to make my cuts. Again, people use a chop saw for this, and it is easier to use a chop saw. I just don't own one anymore. Haven't had a reason to own one. I gave the last one I had away. Gave my disc sander away. I didn't need it anymore. So you may want to use that. Me, I've gotten really good at doing this. And when you're cutting on a tight radius like this, it's not easy to put it in a chop saw. It's not always easy to clamp that into your chop saw. And some people just don't like to hold it. Sometimes you have an angle that's just a weird angle on it, and you can't do it in a chop saw, so these things work great anyway. I like this, the freeform cutting that I do with this thing. It's just what I like, you know? There's faster ways. I don't think they're any better. They're just faster. So faster is not always better either. I mean, like I said, sometimes it can get you to slow down just a little bit. Sometimes you can slow down a little bit and get a better part. Nice flush part. And I clean it up. I just take my die grinder. There's my flat piece I was talking about. And you see, look, got a little bit of rock. I can see right where it's at. A little more. There we go. Nice flush part. And before I clean this up, I always just file. I've got a, I've got a deburring tool that I'll use, but with stainless, it's just easier to file it. And usually, I'm just showing you what I do. I'll fit these parts up most of the time before I file it. I mean, what's the point if you got to grind a little bit more off? You got to take a little more material off or change an angle, then you just wasted your time filing, you know. So, see how it fits up. He's been very meticulous about building this car. There's a lot of really, really cool stuff going on with it, and you'll just have to see it when it's done. I'm not going to expose all of his plans and all the cool stuff he's done in this car, but this is going to be a really insanely cool car that, I mean, has been very detailed. A lot of attention to detail in this car, so I'm super stoked to be able to be a part of this, to get to work on this car and do it and be any part of it. And like I said, there was just a lot of slowing down, thinking about what you're doing. We really didn't have a lot of backing up and changing. We changed 2 parts the whole time. These are the 2 pieces that we actually backed up and changed, which that's nothing, in a whole exhaust system. But our goal was to make it as clean and as well balanced and to actually flow and to work properly. I don't know how many times I've seen a car, and I've worked on a lot of cars. Again, I'm building my first hot rod, this 32 Roadster right now. I'm building my first hot rod right now, but I've worked on tons of cars, and I've seen so many exhaust systems that have just had kind of pigeon poop welded, and the exhausts are crushed and falling off. Nothing is where it goes. I've seen motorcycles where they build exhaust systems and they can't even run. You can't even operate the kickstart. The kicker won't even work, or it burns your leg, or it burns your wife or girlfriend's leg on the passenger seat. Like, you really need to slow down and think about what you're doing. I mean, who wants to spend this much money, this much time, this much effort on a car or on a motorcycle and it not actually work? Things can look great, but they have to actually operate. You know, I don't think we could have done any better than what we've done here. I think
buff it for free, right?
I'm going to buff it for free.
Okay, that's cool. Because I wanted it shiny.
Yeah.
I'm waiting
So
for that.
that's probably what's going to happen to this. Again, we have to finish weld all the stuff up. To be honest, that's the easy part. That may seem, and I'll include a little bit of that here. Okay, folks, I was a little reluctant to share this on the interweb because the interweb has a lot of opinions. And there's certainly a lot of opinions about welding, and even more opinions about welding stainless tubing. I'll start with this. I've been welding 25 years, something like that. I'm 53 years old. I've been welding nearly half my life. I had some really great teachers. Shout out to my buddy Eric Kane and Denny Jameson for getting me started in welding all those years back. And I pretty much have been doing things the same way ever since. And I'm proud to say that I've never had a weld fail in my entire fabrication career. And I credit my great teachers for that. We're going to talk about welding stainless tubing. And there's a lot of opinions on it. A lot of people, you know, you'll hear say, oh, you really ought to backfill your pipe, you know, your tubing, you ought to purge it, you know. And what they're talking about is with your shielding gas, your argon. You ought to fill this tube with argon and keep it pressurized while you're welding. And it makes a good strong weld from the inside out and a nice smooth weld on the inside as well. And I will tell you, do I believe it's absolutely necessary? No, I don't. And here's how I know that. Because I've seen a lot of stainless tubing that's been welded up and it's still out there running around. And I've never seen any stainless tubing fail because it wasn't purged. Not in an exhaust system. Maybe up in the headers and things like that, certainly. But just coming out the tailpipes and the mufflers and all that, I've never seen one fail. So, is it necessary? I don't believe it's necessary. Are we going to do it? Do I do it? Yes, I do. And do I do it the way everybody else does it? Probably not. Again, I'm not telling you this is the only way. I'm not telling you it's the right way. I'm telling you it is a way to do it. And I'm telling you that what do the kids say? They call it my lived experience. Okay, I'm telling you my lived experience, okay? And the way that I do it is this. In order to fill this up, I tape up all my joints with aluminum tape. I tape over the very end of the piece of tubing. I put a hole in it, okay? I got a Fernco up here in the front. It's just a rubber, cap that you can find at any plumbing store. This is a 2-inch, and it works really, it fits great on this V-clamp flange. That's what I'm using here. It's just got a hole in it with my tube going in it. Now, do I have 2 tanks or 2 regulators? No, I do not. What do I have here? I've got 1 tank, 1 line. We'll call this the master regulator, and it's a T. That's all it is a T. And I got 1 hose coming to my welding machine and another hose coming up here to this little lawnmower petcock thing here. That's where the hose comes up, and that's what flows into my exhaust. Now, the reason that we purge this exhaust is to get that nice strong weld, to get a nice smooth weld inside, because is it necessary for an exhaust? No, I don't believe it's absolutely necessary. Is it necessary for a more sanitary weld, like in the dairy industry or in the pharmaceutical industry? Absolutely. In fact, I believe it's the law. So it's a highly regulated industry, those things, because it makes a smoother weld, and you don't want places where particles can get hung up on some crusty parts of your weld on the inside. Again, your weld may be strong, but it may be ugly, and it may be kind of gross on the inside, no matter what it looks like on the outside. So I purge, and here's how I do it. I showed you my system. What I do is I'll turn on the tank. I've got my master regulator set at 18, okay? I've got my petcock cracked all the way open. I can hear the tube filling up right now. So I'll leave that on for a few minutes, and I'll let that tube fill up with argon. Once I think I've got it filled up, I'm going to back this off, and I'm going to bring this down to about 5. Now again, I had it set at 18, I brought it down to 5. Now, when I turn my machine on, I step on my pedal, I'm going to have about 12 to 14 at the head of my torch, okay? Now, there's going to be guys that say, oh, that's not enough, or oh, that's way too much. Listen, there's a lot of channels, a lot of message boards where you can go learn how to weld, and you can nerd out arguing with each other about what's right, what's best, what's the only way to do it. I'm telling you the way I've done it, and it works for me. It's worked for me for 25 years. Again, I've never had a single failure. So that's the way we're going to do it here. And we've got it all set up. I've got the argon flowing in. We'll kick on the machine, and we're going to get started by welding up this joint right here. And we're going to try to use as little filler rod as possible. We've got some real nice tight joints, and we ought to be able to just fuse all this stuff together. right? Probably won't show you the entire system, but we'll just do a couple little welds here so you can see. And the end result, nice looking part, sufficiently welded. And if Brian wanted to polish it all up, it would be too tough to do that. I think it looks pretty just the way it is. That may seem like the hard part. It's not. That's the easiest part of the whole job, is just zipping welds around this. We're gonna, we're gonna plug up the ends. We're gonna put some argon inside of this tube and purge it, and we're gonna zip up this stuff here. It's not gonna take very long to do that, and I'm just really proud of it. And I had so much fun with my friend Brian. He's such a real hot rodder, a lifelong hot rodder. Had your first 40 when you were how old?
13, I got my first 40 coupe and had it for 25 years. And
check this out. I love doing this. All right, but yeah, I mean, Brian's a real hot rodder, lifelong hot rodder, and super honored to have you trust me with your carbide.
He's a deluxe redhead.
All right, so I know we sort of ended the show, but I wanted to pop back on. We've added some finishing touches here, and I really want to show you guys this stuff here. So we still haven't welded up the seams. That's fine. Nobody wants to see just constant welding of seams. But the we had to make the mounts, and I wanted adjustability all the way down this thing. So the way we built these mounts, we built a stainless leg on the bottom of this that's threaded, where we can run a bolt up through the bottom, and there's 2 GM nuts, so it has full adjustability. We can move this up and down, and that's what we really wanted. We wanted to be able to position this exactly where we want it when it's finished and when it's going together. So we have one here. Of course, we have the mount at the header. Then we have another one back here. So with more adjustability, and this sweeping up over the axle and through the cross member, we come to the back and we have a hanger here. And this hanger is the same way. It's got adjustability up and down. We just took a bigger piece of the pipe. We actually used one of the flanges off the end of one of the pieces of tubing and built these sleeves with a tapered Allen head, so we can put a spacer in here for the height, the finished height that where it's gonna ride. That way we can get this thing really nice and level coming out underneath the bumper, exactly where Brian's gonna want it to be. So I just wanted to show you how we ended up doing that. Again, this clamping system is so great. It works so well, and we're able to adjust these and turn them any way we want. That'll be great for service work or maintenance in the future. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing to my channel.